Coming up next on the Filthy Rich Cleaners podcast.
I get so many questions from people who are like, I don't have any commercial accounts. What would your suggestion be for them to get their foot in the door and people to actually give them a try?
From your first dollar to your first million, welcome to the Filthy Rich Cleaners podcast, presented by ZenMade. Join your host, Stephanie Pipkin, founder of Serene Clean, as she shares proven tips, tricks, and hard-earned lessons. Whether you're just starting out or ready to scale, get ready to discover how to build your own cleaning empire. Let's roll up our sleeves and dive in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Filthy Rich Cleaners podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Pipkin, and today's amazing guest is Mark Lineberry, and he is the owner of My Clean Pivot. And I am so excited for this conversation, you guys. It's going to be quite different, I think, than all of our guests previously, and you guys are going to learn a ton because Mark's experience is truly mind-blowing to me, especially in very specific ways, and we'll get into all of that. So first and foremost, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Well, hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's great talking to you. In terms of background, I gotta say, I didn't have any experience cleaning before I entered the cleaning business. I was in college. I was studying political science and economics, and I was wrapping up my undergrad. I had started a business while I was in school, saw a lot of success from that. But the challenge was I just didn't have enough income to make it successful where I could work in that business full time. So I was looking for a part-time gig. My future father-in-law, well, I dated my future bride in college. That's where we met. He owned a commercial cleaning business. He was an immigrant to this country back in the mid 70s, came here, did unarmed security for a local building. And his story is phenomenal because he was doing unarmed security, and one of the owners of the building, this 14-story building, came down and said, "Hey, would you like to clean this building? Do you know how to clean?" He didn't know how to clean. He goes, "Yeah, I know how to clean," right? The classic startup story there. So he started his own cleaning business, and that was in 1978. Well, fast forward in 97, I was finishing up my undergrad. I was looking for something, and he said, "Well, I have all these contracts. I don't know anything, whether or not these contracts are valid or if they're written correctly. My clients' lawyers wrote them for me, and that's how he got a start." I said, "Yeah, I'll review them for you." And I had a brief stint studying law within the political science side of things. And so I was looking at these contracts. They're definitely one-sided, right? They're geared towards his clients, not towards him. They're very unfavorable. And I just restructured everything. And I said, "Well, what are you going to do with these contracts? They've already got active contracts." And he goes, "Well, that's what I use for my proposal." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "I use these contracts for the proposal." And what he is doing, he's taking the contracts, he was putting whiteout on it, he was changing the dates, changing the business name, put in the photocopy machine, and that's what he'd hand out as a proposal to his prospects. And he grew it to a 7-figure business just by doing that.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I can't even use a fax machine.
And so he grew this business really from bootstrap, and it's 100% through referrals. He did no advertising. He did no marketing. He didn't have a sales team or anything like that. And so it's like, let's redo this. Let's make this look nice. And so we created some really nice proposals for him, attached the contract for it. And then he said, "Well, hey, do you want to do sales?" And I never sold anything in my life. I may come across as extrovert. Truthfully, I'm introverted. Right after this interview, Stephanie, I'll go off to the corner and I'll just be kind of like building time for myself because I need to recharge. But doing sales, that just scared the snot out of me. I said, "Well, let's do it," right? Because I'm dating his daughter and I want to look good for the future father-in-law. It's like, okay, let's do it. And so one thing led to another, and I ended up doing sales for him. His company had shrunk down to 600,000 by the time I started with him in 1997. And over the next 2 years, just by changing the sales process, and I asked from him, "Hey, give me some sales training." I didn't know anything about that, so please cover that. And then give me unlimited time off because I still had my other business and wanted to focus on that. But I'll give you 100% during that time, and I'll bring you a lot of success. And we increased the business from 600,000 to 1.8 million over the course of about the next 2 years.
Wow. And was that exclusively commercial contracts or what was the spread looking like?
100% commercial. Their target niche was office buildings. So they were targeting anything, well, generally anything above 25,000 square feet. They just wanted one full-time person at a minimum working at that location. So anything smaller than that, we said no to and passed on. But our niche was office buildings, and we pulled in a law of office buildings throughout the DC area.
Oof, no kidding. And especially at that time period when I think all of our listeners, hopefully their ears are perking up of oh, that was before the internet-y time, that we are in now. So they're probably wondering, good Lord, how did you do that? Care to share, Mark? How did you do it?
Well, there's no magic sauce. I dialed for dollars. And that's the scariest thing is scary for me, to be honest with you. I just pick up the phone, go to the phone book, and start calling because, we didn't have the internet to go to. I think we had CompuServe or something like that, or Prodigy way back then. But we grew the company just through calling. Through referrals was our number one source at that time. Mm-hmm. Just asking everyone who had a pulse, hey, who do you know works inside an office building? And that most everyone in DC area. And if they said, yeah, it's hey, can you make a connection for me? And one thing would lead to another, and that'd lead to connections. Networking. So local chamber of commerce was phenomenal. I remember bringing our lawyer and introducing our business lawyer to the local chamber of commerce. And he said, hey, I'm going to your chamber of commerce meeting. Come to my BNI meeting now. So I started to go BNI and just network through there as well. Cold calling, as I mentioned. Did a little bit of sales letters. I enjoyed doing that. Definitely didn't have a website. We didn't have an email address, I don't think, at the time. So we didn't do anything electronic or anything like that.
Everything was over the phone?
Yeah, everything was over the phone or in person or through a handshake. And then we also did some print ads, which actually worked really well. We found a local Catholic diocese had their own newspaper with multiple churches, 100% readership rate. And so we did a lot of print ads in there, and that worked out pretty well for us as well.
I'm just marinating on the idea of asking people do you know people who work in these types of places? Can you make that connection? That's a really great tip. And I'm specifically thinking about, I get so many questions from people who are I don't have any commercial accounts. Why would they give me the time of day? And I'm yeah, you're right. Why would they? Because I had a really, I was super lucky. I guess you could call it, I don't know if I like to use that word, but, when my first commercial account, big one, came a calling literally 2 months into me existing as a business. And it was because I had a great looking website, not a lot of competition. I put on there that I did commercial. And it was a giant facility, and I got it. And so then, commercial was a part of our history, literally from day one. The first place we got actually was a hardware store. To this day, we still clean that hardware store once or twice a week. And they're wonderful clients. They get us lots of clients. And so, commercial from day one has been a part, even though most people at first glance would think that we're mostly residential. Actually, it's mostly commercial. And so I had a pretty easygoing experience getting those first commercial accounts. Most of our listeners are not so lucky, and they don't have any social proof to point to. What would your suggestion be for them to get their foot in the door and for people to actually give them a try? Why would people give them a try, and how do our listeners convince them to give them that try?
Ever see The Wizard of Oz? Remember the wizard? Right? Mm-hmm. He's just this small little guy and make himself look real big. Well, I mean, that's what we can do with the internet, can't we? We could make a really nice website, and I'm sure that's what you did. And someone
exactly what I did.
was attracted to it. And then you could have really nice branding, because people look, is your email address, at gmail.com or at yourcleaningcompany.com, right? And so when you present a great face forward, even if you're small, they'll see you as big, and they'll at least give you a shot. They'll give you some trust as long as you're addressing their pain points and their needs as a facility owner or facilities manager or decision maker within those facilities. As long as you're addressing their needs and you come at the right price point, you'll win every time. And so fast forward, we exited in 2022. And we had acquired the business in 2011, but exited in 2022. Our marketing in 2022, we weren't doing print ads, but we were doing email marketing. We were doing SEO with our website. We were still doing sales letters, and we're still doing referrals and networking. I mean, it really didn't change other than a slight electronic dynamic shift. And our top referral of new business in 2022 was actually SEO. 90 to 95% of our business came in just because they found us on the web. So definitely invest in that time, invest in the branding. It is an expensive proposition, but you could do a lot of SEO yourself. You don't have to spend, $1,500 or $2,000 a month like what we were doing before to grow a very serious and very significant size business.
And that was actually something like my managers, that was part of their job every week is each of you write a 1,000-word article with these keywords in it, and we're putting it on the website because we need original content. And now, sure, AI could make that a lot easier now, but it really does work because you start to show up and you need to, show up. And that just when people are unwilling or, not wanting to ask for reviews or put in that time and effort, I'm like, you are shooting yourself in the foot, guys. Like, I know it seems like a lot of money or a lot of time or effort. Well, that time and effort you're going to be putting into other things that are not going to be as effective. And considering what commercial can do for us as cleaning business owners, I mean, far and above superior to residential, in my opinion. Like, I mean, you can't argue with the numbers. You can't argue with the stability. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir. Everybody wants to get it. They don't know how. Well, Mark just gave you some wonderful tips, guys, on how to hit that pavement and go about this, even if you don't have that type of experience. And you mentioned, value and pain points. I would love to hear you go into your thoughts on that, because I think you have a really great mentality about this and something that our listeners need to hear when it comes to your value proposition.
Well, see, this is kind of funny because I have 25 plus years of data to pull from. I could tell you every objection. I wrote everything down. I tracked it all over the years. I still have my original proposals and my original pricing from 25 years ago. And
I would frame those on the wall.
You should see my first pricing sheet. It was to a church. And I did a webinar recently where I showed that pricing sheet, and it looks really cool, but I'm paying someone, I think, $7 an hour. Well, back in the late 90s, that was okay, I guess. I forgot to add labor taxes. I forgot to add supplies to this pricing sheet. And guess what? I had everything else broken down like overhead, but I didn't have profit. I had no net profit in there. And that's the price that I presented to this private church and school, or private school and Catholic church attached to it. And I gave it to them, and it was a ridiculously low price. And they jumped at it. They go, yeah, I'll sign it right then and there. And so, yeah, you don't have to be perfect on this. That's what I do want to stress here. You do not have to be perfect. But in terms of value propositions, probably the best way to go about this is a very simple exercise. All of you have access to this for free. It's called ChatGPT. You could go there and you could say, hey, you are a marketing expert. This is the prompt you type in. You are a marketing expert. You are targeting, enter niche name here, schools, churches, medical offices, whatever. You're targeting medical offices. Give me a list of 5 different pain points that they may have around their commercial cleaning service right now. And they'll tell you. And I took that list. I did this recently. I actually did a blog post about this, where I took that list and I break it down by each niche. These are all the different pain points that a lot of people experience. And I ran it through ChatGPT, that prompt, and aligned with that list. So, I mean, just something like that. It's free. Everyone has access to it. You can know what your client's pain points are before you even work inside that niche.
What's that one? That's a fantastic suggestion of using our technology, guys, to the fullest. That's completely free and allows you to utilize knowledge that you don't have right now, and also make you think differently. Because even the prompt of you are a marketing expert, it's that's genius. Telling it how it should be thinking, if you will, thinking. And so yeah, I love that idea. I know that you do your company specializes exclusively in churches and schools, right? What was the reasoning behind focusing on that? And I think of a certain size as well. And how would you suggest our listeners going about choosing who they target? Because you don't want to be serving everybody, of course. So what would you suggest for that?
So I came up just in my own head at one point, probably about 30 different niches that you could do business in: churches, schools, banks, gyms, dance studios, government, office buildings, office suites. I mean, you name it. There's tons out there. Industrial, agricultural, up in Wisconsin. I'm sure there's more than one up there.
And actually, yeah, for us, our bread and butter is industrial and blue collar shops. Like that is, those are our big boys. And then our biggest is a giant government facility. But it's not, it's definitely not, I mean, we have office buildings, but those aren't our money makers. There's not giant, skyscrapers in rural Wisconsin. It's not like that. So we like the dirty shops.
Yeah. So you just make a list of all those niches. Think of as many as you can. I have a simple guide if you want access to that at the end of the show. But you could actually go into those niches. And I recommend people just pick one. Focus on one. I had two, but we started off with one. That's office buildings. And after a while, we realized in office buildings, if you're bidding in there, you're bidding against 10 other people, 20 other companies, et cetera. And my business partner, former business partner, he always joked around about this. We'd walk into a large office building. There might be 10 other cleaning companies in there. He'd walk around and make cow noises under his breath. He'd go moo as we're being shuffled around with all these people, herded around like cattle. There's no way to develop relationships when you're with all these people. You can't address their pain points. You can't have those one-on-one conversations. There's no relationship building whatsoever in those type of facilities. But in churches and schools, we would bid these locations, and without exaggeration, there'd be only one or two other cleaning companies bidding the same location. Or there might be three or four, but two or three of those might not even send their bid in. They just flake out for whatever reason. So it became a natural fit for us. The original business owner, he got active within his church, and so those connections expanded as well. So it's just a very good fit. And I think churches are very easy to clean, right?
Yes, several love them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're there primarily once or twice a week. They got meetings in the evenings, sometimes in the daytime or whatever, but they need their facility cleaned all week long. And so it's a great niche to build in. Schools too, because you have, technically 365 days of school, still have summer schools, summer camps and stuff like that. So there's never a break in a lot of these schools. And so it's just year-round business. It's great income. It's our average school size was probably, if I had to just throw a number in my head, probably about $8,000 a month. And that's for an average school. And so if you have 250 kids in there, you're looking at $5,000 to $8,000 a month of revenue coming in to your pocket.
Wow. And I've always been intimidated, or really didn't even consider schools, because at least in my local school districts, we always had janitors that were hired by the school district. So being a independent or a subcontractor, I should say, of the district was not even something I would consider, just because of what I have experienced in my own life. So it's kind of crazy to hear that so many schools are going the subcontractor route, it sounds like, which.
And let me clarify that. These are actually private schools that we targeted. We're here in the Washington, D.C. area. So you have different school districts, D.C. public schools and Fairfax County public schools, Loudoun County public schools. A lot of these school districts, they do not outsource their cleaning whatsoever.
That makes sense then. I was a public school girl, obviously.
They do have RFPs they put out where they find people who are willing to bid to be on call in case something happens. We were invited to DC public schools in the middle of COVID because their janitors were all out sick or whatever like that. So we had opportunities there. But we found it easier just to target private schools. So these are the Catholic schools, the Lutheran schools, the Episcopalian school, whatever's going on in your neck of the woods, non-denominational or non-religious schools, tons of them out there, right? And so we just bid on these schools, and it worked out really well.
That's amazing. And I know, at least even just for myself, of like the overwhelm of thinking of actually pricing and getting it right. So I would love to hear about any tips you have for me or for our listeners when it comes to like pricing these large facilities, because, we over the years, we've gotten it down pretty pat, I would say, based on just going off of our like other accounts. How does somebody who does not have a lot of commercial experience bid? Because I've always been of the mindset you don't do it by square footage in commercial facilities, because one building the same size as another could be wildly different on time. So throwing that idea out the door, what do you got for us? How do we do this?
Well, I mean, to echo what you're saying there, Stephanie, if you bid a 10,000 square foot office and it's just enclosed offices, that takes a lot quicker to clean than 10,000 square feet in cubicles. Or conversely, let's say you're bidding 10,000 square foot construction office. That would be a lot quicker because the level of clean is expected is a lot lower, right? Than a surgical center, for example, where it has to be pristine. It'll take same square footage. One takes a whole lot longer than the other. So we never, ever, ever, never bid square feet whatsoever. But what we do target is guesstimated time. We guess that time. And here's how we do that. So I've done over 1,000 walkthroughs. So I've seen all sorts. I could walk into any facility, roughly 50,000 square foot or less, and know exactly how much time it'll take just based on that experience. But then there's times where the building's bigger and I get a little nervous, sweaty palms. We all get them. I still get them. I still make mistakes, guys. A lot of mistakes. Hey, we were talking before the show about the encampment cleaning or the refugee cleaning. I could tell you our price based on what you're telling me before our pre-call, I would have underbid it. And even though I was paying someone $25-30 an hour, I would have to pay a whole lot more based on what you described. I mean,
absolutely. And honestly, it's going to sound crazy. And for our listeners, what we're talking about is Serene Clean got a really once in a lifetime job, basically, when all of the Afghan refugees came over a couple years ago. They got put at our local military base, and we were one of the local subcontractors. And so they were insisting, meaning my contractor for the bid, they wanted a day rate. They wanted a day rate for cleaners. But the problem is no idea scope of work. How long are we talking? What does that involve with OT? That's where it was going to screw me over. So I insisted on hourly, and I charged hourly. And this turned out to be a $1 million+ revenue job. And you have no idea how grateful I am I did hourly, because the scope and complexity of the work changed so much throughout, as it evolved and as time went on. So, never thought I would suggest hourly for a giant commercial account, but it worked.
And but for our schools, we'll go in and guesstimate that time, and there's a lot of steps you could take to guess that time. Number one, you could ask them, hey, how many people are working in the air and what are their hours? And so you could get a rough idea. You can factor in square footage. The average cleaner, we required all of our employees to work 3,000 square feet per hour per person cleaning in a school facility. That includes mopping, dust mopping, stuff like that. So 3,000 square feet, if the school's, 24,000 square feet, that's 8 hours. That's a full-time gig, right? And so you could hire one person or two part-time people, whatever you want to do. Or you could do a account method, what I call, for lack of a better term. You say, well, there are 10 classrooms. Each classroom should only take 5 minutes, right? You're taking out the trash, you're dust mopping, you're mopping, and you're doing a quick dust. That's it. Because you're there every day, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect every single time. It's not a surgical center. So you're going in there 5-10 minutes, let's say 10 minutes, and there's 10 classrooms, for example, that's 100 minutes. So you got 100 minutes there. And then I like to use ISSA's 3X rule on bathrooms. You add up toilets, urinals, sinks. And so if you have a bathroom with 8 toilets, 2 urinals, and 2 sinks, that's 12. 12 times 3 is 36. It takes 36 minutes to clean the entire bathroom. And so you could add up all these different bathrooms, add up all the time, add it to the classrooms, figure out pricing separately for, let's say, a library, gymnasium, or common areas, entranceway, offices, stuff like that. And you just add up all the time and you got common areas left over, and that's roughly a quarter to a third of the entire facility. So you work math backwards to come up with the total time. And so I'll do that as well. I'll do a comparison method to other locations we clean. If they got 10 classrooms and place over here has 10 classrooms we clean, it's like, okay, well, they're roughly the same size. Let's make it the same price. And so that's how we go about our pricing.
Oh my gosh. I hope everybody, like, I'm going to be rewinding and listening, and my customer relations manager who does all our bids, she is going to be watching this. Katie, I'm making you watch this, because what you just said, even like the three times rule for like bathrooms and things, like, gosh, these are so good tips. And how we do it, is a lot of comparison to other facilities, like facilities. Obviously that's hard in the beginning, but truly breaking it down by these rooms and like you said, it makes me, it validates that, there is a lot of educated guesstimating based on our own experience as cleaners. And that there truly is, even in a very, seasoned person and doing so many walkthroughs, so many bids and knowing your stuff, you are not whipping out a laser measurer, it sounds like, because that's oftentimes what I'll see online is like, you need to measure it all out and plug it into a software. And I've never ever wanted to do that. And that oftentimes has to do with, that sounds great till you go do the walkthrough, and it is not like that. There's people working, like the person wants to get you in and out of there. It's just, it's not practical for my experience of what walkthroughs look like. Do you concur, or have you had experiences where you're like, that wouldn't work?
I've never used a laser pointy thingy, for lack of a better term. I did church just recently. The church was up in Maryland. I did a walkthrough, and there happened to be another cleaning company there. And it's like, well, I didn't realize we're doing kind of a joint walkthrough. And he goes, no, he's been there for the past hour measuring things. And he's literally going to the wall, pointing this laser room by room, length times width, multiplying it together to come up with the area. It's like, wow. I mean, for me, I'm about reducing friction points in my interaction with the prospect. And something like that is a friction point, in my opinion.
Totally.
You're there
it's
taking
annoying.
your time, taking up, being a disruption. That's a friction point, and I don't want that.
Now that you've mentioned that, what are the biggest or some of the top mistakes or like, what's the worst things you can do on a walkthrough, and what are some of the like key things that you should be doing? And if you're willing to share that story the first time we talked about the floor thing, if you would, I'd love to hear it. Where you're like, you had insulted the floor work or something, and the guy.
Yeah. So, I'll start with that first before I jump into mistakes. That is one mistake. There's a Catholic church and school in Triangle, Virginia, just right outside Quantico Marine Corps Base. And I remember doing the walkthrough in there, and we were hitting it off as my business partner and I and the facilities manager. I mean, we were like jiving, we were like joking, we're like kindred spirits, right? It's like, I've got this in the bag. I felt so good. Then we get to this room, and this room is kind of like a great room where they have meetings and dinners or whatever. And so we're in this room, and I look at the floors, and you can see like waves in the wax. It looked horrible. And I turned to him, I said, let me back up a little bit. He's complaining about the previous cleaning company that he's about to let go. And I said, man, this cleaning company really did a bad job on these floors here. And he turned to me, he goes, I did those floors. And I'm like, oh no. And so I shot myself in the foot. We lost the bid too, and we deserved that. That was
you lost the bid, Mark. Let's be real.
Yeah, I lost it. That was all me. My business partner, as soon as I said that, he kind of looked at me, and as soon as he responded with this reply, he goes, "Oh, come on."
I would so do that. Like, I am the worst when it comes to this moving much faster than this moves, and so as all of our listeners probably know, but that is right there of like. Make sure, because we've done that before too, where we do the walkthrough And I'm noticing like it's horrific, like it's bad. And I'm trying to basically set myself up to be able to sell our quality, right? And our quality control system and how robust it is and how that's going to be great for them, blah, blah, blah. But please, guys, make sure you know who the heck is doing the cleaning first before you start insulting it, because a lot of times it's a friend, it's a daughter of an employee. Yeah, it's their wife. Like, you don't know. So just get that context before you start going in for that kill, if you will.
Yeah. In terms of mistakes, that's a big one. Another one I would say that I see other cleaners do, I've never done this. Don't ever, never, ever, never, ever, never, ever, ever, never give a price during the walkthrough. A lot of people do that. And here's why you don't want to do that. Number one, as soon as you announce your price, they're going to judge you on the price for the rest of that walkthrough. They're going to judge you. They're not going to listen to a word you say. They're just going to be thinking about that price. Number two, when you're shooting from the hip and giving a price right there in the spot, it's so easy to make mistakes.
Yep.
It's very easy. And so there's times early on, a couple times I'd go, I know this. I'm going to give a price here. So I've been in a facility just like this, and I've made a mistake, and I've gone back. It's like, oh, my numbers are all off here. And so it's easy to make that mistake, and it's easy to underbid, unfortunately, or even overbid where they're thinking about you and judging you for the rest of the walkthrough. So never, ever do that. I would say outside of wasting their time with laser pointy thingies, I think everyone should do a research or do some research before doing a walkthrough. So sit down, go on Google Earth, look at the facility size, figure out how many or how big it is, look on their social media, look up at all the pictures and see if there's dust in the vents and stuff like that. See if there's a pain point there you can solve for them. As you look on Google Earth, if you see shrubbery or shrubs or plants or trees adjacent to the property, they have a bug problem inside that property because those bugs enter from those window points right there by the trees and shrubs and everything else like that. So definitely do your research on that, study that, figure out what their pain points are, figure out who the decision makers are. And if you see more than one decision maker, when you show up, you ask them point blank, hey, are you the decision maker here, or are there other people we should talk to after this walkthrough? And so you just want to figure out these different nuances to developing those relationships before you even show up. And obviously, goes without saying, always show up on time. And if you showed up with a dirty car, you've blown it. Right?
Yes.
Because if they see
just like houses,
So if you've shown up in a dirty car, you've blown it. And I can't tell you how many times they would walk me to the car after the walkthrough. And so make sure the inside of the car looks nice too. So they'll judge you on that. Show up 5 minutes early. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we could listen twice as more than we talk. And so when I do my walkthrough, I'll do 2 minutes of pleasantries. Hey, how you doing? What do you think about the Super Bowl this past weekend? That type of thing. And I'll talk to him for 2 minutes, and I'll say, hey, can you show me around? That's the first question I ask. Can you show me around? And so as we're walking through, I have about a dozen questions I'll ask them. I'll ask, obviously, how did you hear about us? Because I want to know what marketing sticks. But the other questions, half of them are designed to discover their pain points, and the other half are to get answers to logistical questions I ask. So pain points questions include, what do you like best about your cleaning service right now? What do you like least about your cleaning service right now? Related to that, and they always give a different answer. If we could change one thing tomorrow, what would that one thing about the cleaning be? And so you get all these different perspectives, and then you ask, hey, how many days would you like us here? If we were selected, what's the earliest in the evening that we could start here, that type of thing. And you look around and bring up all these different points. So if you see trash liners and trash cans, if you see toilet paper in the bathrooms, you just say, hey, I see you have toilet paper, paper towels, hand soap, trash liners. Do you need to provide us? Or do you need us to provide any of these items here at your location? So you just ask all these questions, get a feel for them, and that factors into our price, which is another another reason why you never want to price on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
It changes all the time. They might say, hey, we need you to clean, but we need you to disinfect every single surface. We saw that during COVID, right? When you go to disinfect, it adds time because now you're with the trigger sprayer or bucket with disinfecting solution, and that just adds time, right? And so all these different nuances. After the questions and we conclude the walkthrough, then I summarize everything in 2 minutes or less. There's a study out there for tippers or at restaurants, right? The servers get more tips if they repeat back what the patron ordered, right? And so if you're repeating back, hey, let me get this right. You would like blah, 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 blah. And those who do that get more tips than those who do not do that. And so I figure if it works for tipping, it works for cleaning too. So I repeat back, let me get this right. You want us to come in 5 days a week, do this, this, and this. Your biggest pain points are blah, 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 blah. And then I leave it at that, 2 minutes or less. And then I dive into a 30-second elevator pitch. I only sell our services for 30 seconds the entire walkthrough. I give our elevator pitch. Hey, we're My Clean Pivot. We serve churches, offices, schools, and banks just like yours. We've been in business for such and such years. And here's what separates us from the competition. Quality control program that involves surface checks, surveys, and in-person walkthroughs, joint inspections, and so forth. Whatever you want to come up with, whatever your USPs are. And then I give a next steps. Say, hey, this is what we'll do next. Let me confirm your email address. I'll email you to our proposal to you. And I'd love to follow up with you in 2 days. Would that be okay if I give you a call? And that's it. You leave it at that, walk away.
I love it because it just doesn't feel like you're hard selling. It just feels like, one, you are making sure that you understand them. And I'd imagine that's where that raise in tips and everything comes from, is like the person is feeling heard and understood, and you're also giving them an opportunity to clarify. And I know for us with a lot of walkthroughs, oftentimes the person that is doing the walkthrough, they've been just tasked this, and they are themselves are unsure. Like they have never done that before. At least for a lot of our walkthroughs, I've seen that where they don't even know what to expect. So we really have to take charge and say, well, will you show me around? And like they just don't even know. Can you show me the janitor's closet? Do you guys supply these? Or do we need to supply these? Like all of these things. So like you really do have to place yourself as the expert. And I know that is easier said than done, especially in the beginning. And I do think of that big walkthrough I did very early on at that manufacturing facility. I was just turned 23, no, commercial under my belt, barely any cleaning under my belt. And the guy doing the walkthrough, Jacob was his name, and he was asking where I went to school. We were, because very small area. And I was like, oh, and he was like, oh, what year did you graduate? He was trying to figure out how old I was because I looked so young. And because clearly he was like, this girl's full of shit. And he was like, oh, do you do a lot of facilities? I'm like, yeah, I do another manufacturing facility actually, or we. I always use the phrase we to make it sound like it wasn't just me.
The wizard, we.
Yes, exactly. The wizard. I love that. That's such a good way to think of it. And so, I was like, yeah. And it was actually my parents' company. They, I cleaned their shop. So technically, just as part of my job there. So yeah, I just said whatever I had to say in order to seem like more competent than I truly was. And then I knew the beautiful thing is, guys, we can figure stuff out after the fact, and just trust in your ability to figure things out, and everything is figure outable. It truly is. We just, you gotta give yourself an opportunity to test yourself. So yeah, love the, giving them an opportunity to feel heard. Just a small elevator pitch and tailoring it to what they've expressed as their pain points, which you have established because you've asked for their needs, you've asked what they like, what they don't like, so you can really hone in on that and not say things that are irrelevant to them. They don't care about a lot of things. And so keep that in mind, guys, that whatever you think your selling points are, maybe they're not to your ideal and likely buyer or who you're trying to target. So you have to listen. And I need to cross stitch that, like, two ears, one mouth, and put that on my wall, because that's a reminder I should tell myself often. So I really, really love that. And so, I would love to just hear, when it comes to the services that you guys do offer, some of them are highly specialized, or at least what I would consider specialized, which is like the specialized floor care, which I'd imagine comes into place a lot for schools, probably churches too, I'd imagine. Portering services. Number one, what does that mean for our listeners? And Stephanie, who didn't know that before we talked the first time, what does that mean?
Sure. Let me go back a few steps. So when I first started doing sales, our company, let me back up. Entrepreneurs fall into the trap where they want to say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. And that's what the previous cleaner, or the owner of the cleaning company, did. He wanted to say yes to everything. So yeah, we did janitorial, porter, specialty floor work. We even did disinfecting before COVID, law disinfecting. But then we did other things. We did light maintenance, light plumbing, light electrical. We didn't have any licenses or anything. Sometimes we did some landscaping. We did parking lot services, because we're in the DC area and parking's at a premium. So we'd have someone out there. Parking lot services. We did unarmed security. We did maid services. And then we did an in-home chef service. Mm-hmm. So
jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. Master of none for sure. And we weren't known for anything. Yeah, we did cleaning and stuff like that. We're really good at it. But when we took over the company, we just sat down. It's like, okay, where are all the dollars going to? Let's track this. Let's relate it to marketing. How are we spending this on marketing? And let's compare the two. And we realized, okay, we need to dump all these other things, because the in-home chef service, we didn't have a food license. We're in there. That came about because we're cleaning Catholic churches. Catholic priests don't know how to cook, and they have their own in-house residents. So we're in there cooking for them, but we didn't have a food license. So we were kind of operating under the table. Unarmed security, our insurance company always frowned come renewal time. You can't be doing this, but we do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And then
just say they're office workers, just sneak that in there. Hopefully my insurance lady's not listening right now, but that's kind of what I did before my managers were full-time managers. Yeah, you guys just do not get hurt on the job, guys. Just don't do that.
And so we just started slash and burn all these different services, and we started saying no to everything. Now, we did keep the parking for a while, only because is with our very first client, 1978, was the same client through the very end in 2022. They stayed with us the entire time. Wow. And then caveat there, asterisk, in 2020, they were acquired by CBRE, but we still continue doing work with CBRE in those facilities. So it is really cool to have that relationship. So we kept a couple things going, but we didn't add anything new. And then once those contracts disappeared, we were out of there. We never offered it again. So we focused on our core four, and as janitorial, porter, specialty floor work, and disinfecting. Janitorial, you're in there in the evening. You're cleaning this one surface one time, and that's it. You're in and out, right? Mm-hmm. Porter services is a little different. Some of our clients, by the way, for porter services include schools, car dealerships, office buildings. They needed someone in there during the day. You're cleaning the same surface more than once. You're restocking the bathroom more than once. You're cleaning it more than once. They need someone in there throughout the day just to keep the place tidy for the influx of people that come in and out throughout the day. And so we would do porter services, and then disinfecting, self-explanatory. We started doing that in a big way when norovirus hit. Our greatest fear is that norovirus would hit one of our schools. And at the time, if you got hit with norovirus, you made the news. I remember there was a local school that hit national news when norovirus hit their school, and all the students were out sick. Now it's like everyone has it. It's not a big deal.
No big deal.
It's a big deal. And so we were so focused on making sure our facilities were clean and safe for all the people coming in. And then lastly is specialty floor work. So stripping, waxing, carpet cleaning, scrubbing floors, buffing floors, that type of thing. We didn't get into resurfacing. We weren't resurfacing marble floors or anything like that, but we would just do the basics in terms of stripping, waxing, carpet clean.
Okay. I know a lot of folks I talk to, including my own company, has been asked about offering these kind of floor services. And we have always, I guess, suggested another company, just said we don't do that. And truly, I have no interest in getting into it until I could actually focus on it heavily, because I made the mistake of we brought on carpet cleaning before we knew a damn thing about carpet cleaning, because I was like, we're getting all these calls, all of our current customers want it. And so I very much prematurely jumped in without knowing what the heck I was doing. And that didn't feel good. It didn't feel like we were providing a service full of integrity, which is one of our core values. So I stopped it. And I was like, I will revisit this when I am fully ready to go all in and understand this and make sure the tech understands what the heck they're doing, so that people are getting what they deserve to be getting. And so that was definitely a mistake of mine, of getting into something that I was not prepared or ready to fully understand or dedicate myself to. So if somebody is interested in doing this, or their clients keep asking for, the floor resurface, or the stripping and the waxing, and how would you recommend they go about, one, learning how to do this, or deciding if this is a good choice for their business at all? Is this something they should do?
This is something you should consider. If you're doing facilities, you might bid on some facilities where it's part of the scope of work. You have to do it. I can't tell you how many government bids. We don't bid government, because we don't want to be herded around like cattle.
Yes.
But we've bid on government, and even the smallest locations, they require stripping and waxing. So it's,
or carpet cleaning. Yep.
Yeah. It's helpful to know if you're doing schools, they need that summer work done to get the school ready for the fall. If you're doing, hospitals, you got to have those floors all shiny. Retail, the floors need to be all shiny. If you get a church, you have weddings and stuff, you can't have a coffee stain in the middle of the aisle as the bride walking down it. You need to keep the place clean, nice and organized. And so learning that's very helpful. And there's a lot of things you could do. Number one, you could outsource it, just subcontract it out.
Yep.
Yeah, if you don't know how to do it, if you don't want to invest, $4,000 in a carpet extractor, or, $1,500 on a swing machine or something like that, 19, 20 inch, you don't have to do that. You could sub it out, let other people do it. They pick up the expense. They take care of all the supplies, and you could always make an arrangement. Hey, can I look over your shoulder and kind of learn from you? I just want to learn the process. A lot of them will say, yeah, they're eager to help you out. In terms of learning yourself, you can learn yourself. When you buy supplies as a commercial cleaning company, you don't want to be going to Walmart or Target or dollar store, because you'll be throwing tons of money away. You'll be spending like $6 a gallon for a glass cleaner when you could be spending 50 cents a gallon for a glass cleaner. And so when you shop from your local suppliers, your local janitorial suppliers, you might have to dig around for them. Even local can be defined as a couple hours away. Some of these suppliers, they'll have classes and training that you could go and learn absolutely for free. They'll teach you how to do it. They'll give you a fancy little certificate your employees can take home with them and put on their resume or whatever. And so you could take those skills and spread it throughout your company. And the reason they want to teach it for free is they want you to buy their cleaning supplies. So they have incentive to do it. Some of them will even loan you the floor machines to do it, because
wow.
Hey, if you're using the floor machine, you might be inclined to go ahead and buy it, because, they're not going to let you keep it forever. After a week, they want it back. And so you could get in and get out, use the machine for a week, and buy one if you really wanted to. Use the money from that job and actually purchase a machine with it. So you can learn so many different nuances just by learning from other people, watching other people, and taking classes yourself. And there's classes online, great resources. I'm trained to trainer certified through ISSA, and they're or through CMI, and CMI's custodial advanced really starts the training on floor work. So you could learn how to redo a basketball court if you really wanted to. Their training is very specialized in there.
Oh, wow. I definitely will be looking into those resources for sure. Again, just looking, for us, we don't want to continue to increase our service range now that we have 3 locations. It's more going deeper into the service range that we have, including getting more money out of our current clients, which what you're describing is the perfect avenue to do that. It's just, I think because I feel so comfortable because I know how to house clean. I know how to clean a business. Like it's not, rocket science, and the risk is so low. I mean, obviously you can break stuff or damage something for sure, but like my risk aversion to like the level of damage or screwing up that could happen increases drastically as we get into some of these more specialized things, as well as the training associated with techs. Because when I did do the carpet cleaning, that was such a barrier for us, is like, okay, we can get somebody ready to do houses or business cleaning like in a couple weeks, right? Like they're good and they're going to be good. Whereas I get a lot more weary. It was much more challenging for that. So, all of these are definitely excuses that could be worked over, but it's me just not being willing to work through them until probably in the future,
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a good avenue. It's good revenue. And you might run into the client one day where you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was that big government facility. Yeah, you're 100%. It was required that we do carpet cleaning. So we do have an extractor there, and we have our guy there that does it. And it is it's so profitable once you get into it. And so, you had mentioned the 3,000 square foot production rate for your janitorial staff. How do you configure that then with these specialized floors? Is it totally separate, or how do you do the pricing of that? And yeah, because I'm sure people are like, well, how do I do this? Because I'm wondering, how do I do this?
So that's a great question. My business partner was a floor artist. I swear he could do a floor. He might as well sign it. I've never seen floors look so beautiful until after he did it. I would do it, and he would make me redo my own work. He goes, man, you suck. You got to redo this. And that's okay. I accepted the criticism. But the production rate will certainly vary in floors like that, because you could be in some facilities where you got tons of old wax on there and it'll take forever to get off. And you got other locations where the tile underneath that wax is old and brittle, maybe breaking apart, and you have to be very careful and take your time. You might go into other facilities like a school, and you might have 20, 25 desks in a classroom that you have to move out, and you can't keep them in the hallway because it's a fire hazard, for egress in case there's an emergency. So there's a lot of nuances to that. I never came up with a one set price. I would go in with my business partner, and he would tell me, it'll probably take, 4 hours to remove this wax. And then adding each layer of wax would take about an hour. We'd factor in, because you got to do it, and then you got to let set before you put on that next layer, and then repeat the process. Putting on the wax easy. You just mop it on with the finishing mop, and it looks great because it evens out, looks glossy. It looks like a mirror once you're done, but it's the initial part, the stripping part, that could take a while. And then once you finish it, you can't be putting a 200-pound desk back onto that wax. Even after an hour, it'll start to indent into the wax. So you got to be very careful with that. So each location had its own time and place. I would always ask them, how much time would we take on this? In a typical classroom, you might take probably a good 6 hours, give or take 7 hours, depending on the amount of wax that's on there. But you're doing other classrooms in conjunction in that, so you're not sitting around watching wax dry. You're on to the next big thing, taking care of that and continuing on.
It is a very labor intensive, it sounds like, process, but yeah, very satisfying. I mean, yeah, nothing like seeing beautiful, shiny floors after you're done. It has to be quite satisfying, but it is good to hear, like, this is, I mean, to price that, it sounds like it sounds like it'd be a big price tag, like to give a school for floor refinishing. I mean, we're talking about like hundreds of labor hours for an entire school, it sounds like.
So yeah, there's a private school. I'm just thinking of recent numbers. One of the last jobs we did through the first cleaning company is about 24,000 square feet. And that invoice was about 12 grand just to knock it all out. But we were moving pianos, we were moving desks, chairs, you name it, we're moving it. And thankfully, we had the hallways to do a lot of our work. But in some facilities, you just don't have that option. You got to move everything to one side of the classroom and then shift it over to the other side of the classroom.
That a lot of work, which makes me just think of your workers. Do you use subcontractors or independent contractors, should I say, or do you use employees? Or is it a mixture?
It was a 50-50 mix with the first cleaning company. I preferred employees because I wanted to provide the supplies. We had locations like schools where you had to have the SDS binder. We needed to control what supplies were in there in case little Timmy went into the janitorial closet somehow, some way and drank such and such chemical. We needed to have those safety data sheets in there just to keep track of all that. So we preferred, hey, this is who we want to hire. This is how we want to train them. These are the supplies we want to provide. And we were okay with that. But then other times we'd hire subs and we were okay with that. Let's say you have a facility where you're cleaning once a week and they shut off the lights to go home, the workers, at 6 p.m. and they don't show up till Monday. It's easy to go to a sub and say, hey, you got between 6 p.m. on Friday and 5 a.m. on Monday to get this job done. And we think it might take such and such time. What do you think? And kind of leave it at that. And we negotiate a price that way. But our prices were the same, whether we hired a sub or an employee. Our net profit, or our gross profit, I should say, was exactly the same. And that's how we structured our pricing. So it didn't matter if we hired subs or if we hired employees, we still made the same amount of money.
I'm just thinking, is that because typically I've always exclusively ran employees, and obviously what you're describing is a wonderful strategy and something I would recommend everybody consider. Of truly, subs should be like a strategic move, not something that you base the whole staff on. I mean, some people do that really, really successfully. Just my own bias, perhaps. I think employees are fantastic for a lot of reasons. Yeah. But when you just said, your profit at the end of the day was the same, did you not have to pay the subs a higher percentage? Or are you saying because you didn't have to cover the insurance for them and you also didn't have to cover the supplies for them? Is that why those numbers evened out?
Here's how we did it. So our pricing's the same either way. If you pay an employee, you're paying their gross wages. You're paying labor taxes, so I consider that part of labor. You might be paying some benefits like vacation. We gave all of our employees 3 weeks of PTO off per year plus paid holidays. So you got a big chunk in there for that. Then you got supplies that you're providing them. And so you get this big expense on employees. Well, subs, all we did was take that money and shift it over here. We added it all up and we presented them a price. Hey, here's our price per month, but that price, we tell them, hey, you got to provide labor, you got to provide supplies and insurance. And so this way, it's still the same either way. Either we're paying it through here on the employee model or paying it over here through the sub model. Either way, we're paying it. And so it just evened out at the end.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Thanks for clarifying. I just wanted everybody and myself to hear that. And I would love to hear, just as time has gone by, I'm sure you've seen trends and ebbs and flows when it comes to retention, turnover, things like that. Did you experience during COVID a pretty bad time, a good time? And how has it been in recent years when it comes to staffing? Because obviously that is one of the biggest stopgaps for most of us in this industry. Is staffing can be challenging and retention can be challenging.
So I hear, and yes, we experienced this ourselves. So my business partner was in charge of hiring, in terms of training, hiring, etc. And he had his own process. And we hired based on referrals. We never put any ads into Indeed or anything like that. It's just like, hey, who do you know who needs a job? And we'll work with you. Oh, my wife needs a job. Hey, great, we'll hire her, we'll train her. And most of the time it worked out. Sometimes it didn't, but most of the time it did. And so that loyalty was there. It showed that we trusted the employee or sub even to make a judgment call on referring, their own friend, family, relative, whatever. And so that worked great. But then COVID hit. And my business partner, probably a week before COVID hit here in the DC area, made a decision to fly to El Salvador. That's where he's from, to see his family. And I said, if you go to El Salvador, you won't be coming back. And he goes, yeah, I'll just come back next week. I got my return ticket. I said, no, you won't be coming back. And he flew down, and no joke, within 3 days of him flying down, the Army comes in, they shut down the airport, they put troops on the main road to the airport. They said, if you cross this, we'll shoot you.
Oh my God.
And so he was stuck there for the next 3 months. And so he was in charge of hiring and stuff like that. Now, we had slowdown because we niched in churches and schools. We had 70% hit in revenue. We bounced back from that. So we figured, okay, well, who's in the parking lots here in the DC area? That's who we're going to target. And that's what we did. We grew from there. So we're targeting government contractors, GDIT, for example, is a big client provider of ours. So we're growing through those opportunities. So it didn't really hurt our employees any. And I heard on your first episode, the PPP for you, we partook in that as well. And that's a big lifesaver as well.
Yeah.
But once he came back, he lost the passion for hiring people and training people. And so I was bringing in new clients and he wasn't staffing them. And we were losing we had a high churn rate. And it was so frustrating. It's like, okay, I'm not a hiring guy. Remember I said before this episode, I know it doesn't sound like it, I'm introverted. I don't want to be interviewing someone.
I hate hiring. It's terrible. Like dealing with it.
I'd rather give birth to a flaming porcupine than hire someone. I really don't want to do that. And so we were doing, it's just a high churn rate with both employees, with clients. It's like, okay, I got to take this over because he's just not doing his part on this. And so I started doing the hiring on this. And I realized real quick that if I called people, told them to come to our office or we meet somewhere, that most of them wouldn't even show up, right? It's a nightmare. It's like, okay, I obviously suck at this, but then I start to read other people's posts in these Facebook groups. They're going through the same challenges at the time. It's like, okay, well, I'm not the only one, but I need to reinvent my process here. And so what I did, I came up with my list of 100. And what I would do a 3-step interview process with every candidate that called. And not every candidate, they'd get to at least the first step, not proceed to the next. So they would go to apply. I always requested a resume or a work history. If they didn't have a resume, I'd say, just jot something down. I just want to see where you worked at and who you worked for. And so they would give me a list and I'd filter through, and I hired based on experience. I realized that if I hired someone who worked for ABC company, that ABC did phenomenal training compared to XYZ company. And so I knew that if they worked for such and such company, I knew to exclude them from hiring because they went through a terrible training process. I'm suck at training. My business partner, he's, in La La Land. But I realized I needed to refocus on this and hire based on experience only. And so that's what I did. I just targeted experience. So I had my list of competitors who I knew did great at training. I hired from that list. So if you work for such and such company, your odds were pretty high getting in. So for every 100 resumes or applicants that applied with us, for every 100, 90 I would toss in the trash. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but you get the idea.
Oh, I totally get it. Yep.
Yeah. 10% I'd go after, and they'd get the first of possibly 3 steps from me where I'd give them a call. I just have a 5-minute conversation, just verifying that they're applying to the right place and, they're still looking for a job, that type of thing. Just basic stuff. It's like, hey, if you get a second call back, I'll send you a message and we'll do a second call back, and it'll be more in-depth interview. And that second interview was 15 to 30 minutes. And I would do it over Zoom like this. I didn't want people coming to the office where they weren't even show up. We're in the DC area. Our service area was an hour and a half end to end. So I didn't want someone driving an hour away just to do an interview with us. That didn't.
Yeah, you don't want to waste their time too. Very considerate. That's why we've switched over to exclusively. I mean, we do group interviews on Zoom for that first filter. That's our filter. Is if they can't show up to the dang group interview, they can't show up to anything else.
Yeah. So we do that. And if we had a good vibe, then I'd invite them in for a third interview. And that third interview sometimes involved lunch. or I'd take them out
Yep.
to lunch. Sometimes I would ask to have their spouse come. So I want to see how they treated their spouse. This is
Ooh,
more on
love
the
that.
managerial or supervisor level. And I bring my wife with me. And so we did all these things just to boost our knowledge base on that person and so forth. So for every 100, we would eventually find one or two to get to that third interview, and I just picked the one. But with that 10 from that first step, I built that list and I call it my 100. So I kept a CRM, a database of every single person that ever applied with us. For the past 10 years, I got this list built up. And so this way, when someone calls out or whatever, I could go back to that list. Like, okay, well, they applied before, they made it to the first round. They might be worth give them a call back because maybe they're looking for a new job. They probably already found another one. Hopefully they found a new one after a few years, right? But I'd give them a call and I'd talk to them, and a lot of them said, yeah, I'm looking to jump ship, and that'd lead one step to another. So I always kept a stack of 100 resumes on my desk. I could pull from any of them. And if I had 100 already pre-vetted and already had that first interview, I will find one or two out there for sure.
Ooh, I love that. It so makes me think of the whole concept of just like soliciting clients and doing sales behaviors of, what is it, only like 3 or 5% of people are right in that moment looking to actively make a decision, right? So what you're talking, it's the same thing, except that from the employee standpoint of, it may sound like, oh, isn't that a big waste of time? Well, listen, guys, there are only this small amount of people who are willing or currently actively looking to change their career path. But really, you're just keeping this database on file so you have a list to go to. And we do that's so funny. We do the same thing. We have a tracking sheet of all of our applicants, our notes from that. If it's a no, if it's a maybe, so that exactly what you said. If something happens, we have already at least done some vetting and we've got people to go call. It's like, okay, it's been a year. They were good then though. We liked them. We just didn't maybe have the position for them at that time. It's worth a shot, guys. It really is worth a shot. So what a wonderful tip, Mark, to keep your hiring going. And has that, would you say that has drastically improved your retention and your ability to keep the clients?
Totally. It was a life changer for us. And we kept ads running 24/7, even if we didn't have a position open.
Yes.
And we'd have dummy ads, and we'd be transparent. It's like, hey, we're hiring for a potential position in such and such area. Here's a possible rate that we might be paying for this location. Here's the shift that we're looking to hire for. And so we let them decide and run on that. If they're looking, and we'll just add them to the list. And so when something opens up, they get first call, they get first dibs.
Oh my gosh. Such great practical advice. So thank you, Mark. This whole interview, I could keep going for hours with you because, you have so much experience and knowledge, and especially in things that I don't. So those are my favorite kind of people to talk to. So we all can learn from you. So, where can people find you? Obviously now you have, transitioned and started doing coaching and consulting. I'd love to hear about that and where our listeners can find you if they want to learn more from you.
Absolutely. So COVID hits, right? And there's a lot of slow periods for all of us. And so I wasn't on these Facebook groups or anything like that during that time. I didn't know there's cleaning Facebook groups out there. And I discovered them and I started posting and sharing and helping people and stuff like that. And I eventually worked one-on-one with this young lady up in Michigan somewhere. And I was helping her with a bid, and she won it. It's like 7-figure contractor, 7 million or a million square feet. Or I forget what the numbers were. It is huge numbers for her. It's a life changer for her. And she goes, "You helped me do that." And it's like, "No, I didn't do that. You did it. You did your bid. You did the sales." And it's like, okay, well, maybe there's something there, because she told me, "Hey, you should be a coach." And so one thing led to another, ended up coaching. I announced on Cleaning and Cocktails, if you guys listen to that podcast, that I was doing coaching, and announced that to the world. And that was in 2021, January 2021. I haven't looked back.
Wow.
Focus, that's my love, that's my passion. So coaching, courses, some consulting within the cleaning space. I've done that as well. Community is the latest big thing, where I put together a community. And one thing in my coaching, a lot of people say, "Well, Mark, you've never started a cleaning business." And that's true. I never started a cleaning business. I bought one, an existing one. So what I did, I started a cleaning company from scratch. So I transitioned clients to My Clean Pivot, and then I started a new company. And it's called Clean Line Janitorial Services. And what I did, I built this community around that cleaning company. The community named the cleaning company for me. They decided who I was going to target. And in return to this community, it's a paid community, I offer them templates, sales letters, sales emails, proposal templates, employment agreements, you name it, whatever I use in that cleaning business, any business I've done in the past, I give it to them just as a gift for being, I shouldn't say gift, but as a value add for being in the community. So this way they get to see me fail flat on my face. And I'll be fully transparent here in front of your zillions of listeners. I've fallen flat on my face. I started this cleaning company in September and we're still struggling. So hats off to any of you guys starting from scratch. It's not easy. And I didn't realize that until I started from scratch this past September. So kudos to you guys.
Wow. Well, number one, like what a humble person you are to go through that experience and also be able to reflect and say, you know what, this criticism or critique, like I'm going to fully own that and I'm going to actually put myself through it so that I can teach better. Because like there are people out in our space who have not done anything. It's more like they're talking in theory as opposed to going through the actual struggles. And that's like why I so far love this podcast, is like bringing in people who are willing to share their failures and their mistakes, because I think that's where the learning absolutely is. Winning all the time, like you don't learn much, I find, because that's where the challenges are. And I bet like your learning has skyrocketed because you're putting yourself through that, despite having, decades of experience and knowing the ins and outs of all of these different things. But to build it from the ground up, I love that you're doing that and documenting it for all of your followers to see and learn from your experience. So we will absolutely be linking all of that in the show notes, everybody, if you are interested in checking that out, because wealth of knowledge here, Mark. That's how I found you, was on the ZenMade Mastermind, I believe, as you had posted or commented, and I messaged you and was like, hey, can I call you I just want to, we're really going to be focusing on commercial in 2025 even more heavily than we already do. Can I get some pointers and things like that? So thank you for being so willing to share your knowledge. And obviously we are kindred spirits in the fact that our joy comes from helping our people, our community learn and grow, because it's a very wonderful and very I would say motivating industry to be in. The fact that like, one, it doesn't take a lot of money to get into it, and you are truly helping people. Like you are helping people, and it feels so good, to be in a business that you get to help people every single day and provide great work for people. So thank you, Mark. we'll link all your stuff down below, because this was fantastic. I really appreciate it. Anybody got any questions? Just leave them in the comments below, what your favorite like aha moment of this episode was, because I've got like a million. I'm going to be watching this over again because I'm like, gosh, this was so good for commercial. So thank you, Mark.
Well, I put a lot of this stuff together into a free resource anyone can have access to. All your listeners have access to. If you go to www.mycleanpivot.com/filthy rich cleaners, you could actually pull up a landing page and see all these different links that we talked about here on this episode, including access to templates, some basic ones for email marketing, for sales letters, for cold calling scripts, you name it, it's in there. Tons of links, tons of resources.
That is so generous of you. Thank you so much for doing that. And we'll put that in the show notes, guys. Everybody go click there and check out all of these wonderful things Mark has put together for our very special, giant, huge audience of millions of people. Soon. Well, thank you, Mark. We'll definitely put that down there for everybody. And I would love to have you back on in the future, because this was so informative and truly enjoyable. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
You betcha. We'll see you on the next episode, guys, of Filthy Rich Cleaners. Bye-bye.